Dobrý den, vítejte na mém kanále Czech by Zuzka, kde vám pomocí angličtiny vysvětluju českou gramatiku. Today I brought you here to the brook because I wanted to kill two birds with one stone. Chci zabít dvě mouchy jednou ranou, as we say in Czech. I want to teach you about the connectors ale, však and nicméně, which can be used in a very similar way and are very frequent in the Czech language. And I also wanted to teach you a little bit about botanics. Now listen carefully what I'm going to tell you in Czech. Tohle je kopřiva. 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 Kopřiva je běžný plevel, který žádný zahrádkář nevidí rád. Kopřivu v podstatě nikdo nevidí rád. Když se kopřivy dotkneme holou rukou, tak nás popálí. Věděli jste ale, že kopřiva je také léčivá? Obsahuje léčivé látky, které jsou prospěšné našemu zdraví. Musíme však vědět, jak takovou kopřivu sbírat a jak ji zpracovat, abychom se nepopálili. Kopřivu najdeme často v lese, blízko vody. Roste od jara až do podzimu, nicméně je důležité vědět, že léčivá je nejvíce na jaře. Takže když chci takovou kopřivu nazbírat, měla bych najít mladé kopřivy. Tyhle už jsou trochu velké, nicméně já vám ukážu, jak je sbírat. Mám rukavice a jednoduše kopřivu utrhnu. Kopřivu v obchodě najdeme nejčastěji sušenou, ale nejléčivější je právě v této podobě jako čerstvá. Z kopřivy se nejčastěji připravuje čaj. Můžeme z ní však také připravit špenát. A to tak, že ji spaříme vroucí vodou, nakrájíme ji a dochutíme. A můžeme ještě chvíli osmažit na pánvi s česnekem a s máslem. Dobrou chuť! Takže hurá na kopřivy. Nezapomeňte si ale rukavice.
Já jsem původně přišla na kopřivy.
Ale zjistila jsem, že mi je posekali. So let's look at these three connectors. Ale, však and nicméně all work in a very similar way. In fact, these two are almost interchangeable. Almost. When you look at the translation to English, they both work as but and however. Však is definitely more formal. Nicméně is also somewhat more formal, but nowadays it is becoming more of a redundant word. Some people tend to use it too much. Nicméně is translated as nevertheless. You watched my part about the kopřiva, right? About stinging nettle, how we can use it, how we process it. In this little part, you could hear me use ale, však and nicméně. If you didn't notice, I recommend you go back and watch that part again. One thing that I want to also add is that ale is sometimes used not as a conjunction, but expressing a contrast by the English though. Though. So in English, when you use though at the end of the sentence, we could also use ale, and it would not be used in the first place or not after the comma. Já jsem to ale nevěděla. I didn't know it though, but I didn't know it. Já jsem to ale nevěděla. In that short video where I spoke Czech and I was telling you about all the benefits of nettles, the common nettle, I mentioned this sentence at the end. Chtěla jsem natrhat kopřivy, ale zjistila jsem, že mi je posekali. So let's translate the sentence. I wanted to pick nettles, but I found out that they cut them. Že mi je posekali. Mi means they were kind of like my nettles. It's actually my place that I go to. And also because I wanted those nettles, I was going to get them. So, že je posekali would be okay too, that they cut them down. But že mi je posekali, it means that they were mine. Not really, but you know, I was kind of like counting on them. This sentence could be expressed with však as well. It would mean exactly the same. However, nicméně. The word order would change. So we cannot put však right here. We have to put it here. Zjistila jsem však. It would go usually after the verb. Zjistila jsem však. Chtěla jsem natrhat kopřivy. Zjistila jsem však, že mi je posekali. If I said it like this, it would sound too formal. In this context, it doesn't really fit. Však is very good for writing an academic paper when you publish an article. In the newspaper too, but when we speak, unless you're giving a lecture, it is not what we would usually use. We use ale or nicméně. Nicméně for spoken Czech when you want to sound, more proper, you can use that. Však is archaic too. Not only formal, but archaic. So it feels like you are going like 5 decades back in time. Of course, there are situations where you can use však in modern songs too. Sometimes when you want to sound more interesting, it's okay to use it, but in normal speech, I would just not use it. As a conjunction, však also has another function, not as a conjunction of contrasting ideas, and I am not going to talk about it here. This is strictly about conjunctions of contrasts. So if we want to use však, we would use it here. Zjistila jsem však, že mi je posekali. Now, what about nicméně? We have 2 options. One, which would be more common, is we would put it right where ale is, but ale, these 2 words would change their order. One time, a long time ago, I made a video about word order. It was just a very brief video about how you say jmenuju se versus jak se jmenuješ, etc. And I also made a little note that when you use conjunctions a and ale, they don't apply to that word order. So, like here, when you use ale, you know that the word order does not change. It is incorrect to say ale jsem zjistila. So, if you didn't notice, this is a good point for you to realize that ale and also a does not affect the word order, and the second position words stay in this position right after the verb. Nicméně, however, if we use nicméně, then they don't have that special powers. There is another option, but ale, nicméně. There is another option. We can use it here and separate by commas from both sides, and the word order would stay the same. Chtěla jsem natrhat kopřivy. Nicméně zjistila jsem, že mi je posekali. If you make a significant pause, nicméně zjistila jsem, then it's okay to say zjistila jsem. And it would be like really contrasting that idea and stressing it more. Ale I think it's more common to say nicméně jsem zjistila, že mi je posekali. Let's do a tiny exercise. This is a sentence that has 2 parts, 2 pieces of information. Běžel jsem jako o závod. Vlak mi stejně ujel. It's missing the conjunction because there are 2 contrasting ideas. This means I was running like crazy, I was racing jako o závod. This is actually something that I used in my previous video. I said srdce mi tluče jako o závod. My heart is racing. Závod means a race. So I was racing, I was running like in a race. I missed the train anyway. Vlak mi stejně ujel. We use dative again. The train got away from me. Here we want to say I was racing, but I missed the train anyway. So we have 3 options. We can say, nevertheless, I missed the train. Let's start with the most common and most natural option, which would be ale. So you have ale. Where do you put it? I'm gonna give you a second. The second is gone. It will be right here, right after comma. Ale vlak mi stejně ujel. Běžel jsem jako o závod, ale vlak mi stejně ujel. But I missed the train anyway. What about if we want to use však? However, remember it's something that is a bit archaic, but however, nicméně it's good to know about it. Where do you put it? Not here. We would put it a little bit later. Vlak mi však stejně ujel. It's towards the verb. Vlak mi však stejně ujel. It rhymes. Vlak však. Vlak mi však stejně ujel. And where do you use nicméně? Nevertheless, I missed the train. Nicméně, one option is nicméně, comma, pause, And nothing changes. Nicméně, vlak mi stejně ujel. Or we could say, nicméně, mi vlak stejně ujel. Nicméně mi vlak stejně ujel. It connects with the rest of the sentence and it doesn't break the flow. Běžel jsem jako o závod, nicméně mi vlak stejně ujel. I don't see myself using it, but somebody could. An example of nicméně where it would actually be fitting. This is taken from a press conference. I think a politician was talking about something and I'm going to read here from my computer. Poslední otázku odbočím od všeho, o čem jsme v rozhovoru mluvili. Nicméně i nadále se budu držet krajského tématu. Nicméně i nadále se budu držet tématu. So here he wants to sound very proper, formal. He uses nicméně. He could also use však. In that way it would be i nadále se však budu držet krajského tématu. Now I'm going to take you to my computer and we're going to have a look at some more examples from my favorite Czech Corpus. Let's have a look at a couple of examples with ale, však a nicméně. I'm going to read these sentences for you in Czech and you also have them translated here in English. Mám chuť zjistit, jestli je v pořádku, ale v tuhle chvíli by to vypadalo dost hloupě. You can notice that we have a comma and then ale. And we could translate it as but it would look pretty stupid. 2. Trvalo to dlouho, ale zadařilo se. Svou první vločku zachytil 15. ledna. This is an article about a person who takes pictures of snowflakes. And again we have comma and ale, translated as but. Číslo 3. Nedívám se zpět, ale abych slušně odpověděla, dětství jsem měla díky skvělým rodičům šťastné. Okay, here we noticed that there's a period and ale starts the new sentence, which is okay too. It would be the same if we put a comma and then continued the sentence with a lowercase a, but they chose to separate it like this. Now, 3 examples with však, which can be translated as however or but. Remember, it's formal and sometimes a bit archaic. 1. Roku 1391 město Varna dobyli Turci. Rozkvět však nastal až po odchodu Turků, ve druhé polovině 19. století. So, we could translate this as however. And you notice that we have a comma and však goes after the first word in this sentence. The sentence is starting with something else than the verb, then it's však and then the verb. 2. Jan Svěrák už v roce 1992 byl za obecnou školu nominován na Oscara. Získal ho však až o 5 let později za Kolju. Jan Svěrák is a Czech movie director and obecná škola and Kolja are Czech movies. Here you can notice we have again comma, a verb, and then však goes after the verb. To be exact, after the pronoun. The pronoun would have preference. Číslo 3. Jurský park letos slaví 21. narozeniny. Nejnovější díl však dorazí do kin už příští rok. Však is in another sentence, which is okay, and appeared before the verb. We could say this is a rule. When the sentence doesn't start with the verb, then však would go before. It acts just like se and si. Here, we have a word that goes before the verb and that starts the sentence. We have však and the verb, as well as here, však and the verb. However, here is the clause is starting with the verb and však goes after. Now let's see examples with nicméně. 1. Ceny pokračují zhruba do hranice 20 000 Apple iPhone 4. Nicméně špičkové telefony lze koupit za cenu mírně přesahující 10 000 korun. However, this is how we could translate it. You notice there is a comma and nicméně right after it. 2. Zatím nám to kvůli pracovním a rodinným povinnostem nevychází. Nicméně, až se jednou doopravdy vypravím na návštěvu Brazílie, existuje slušná šance, že by tam pro mě domorodci měli postel. Here it starts a new sentence and it is also separated by a comma. 3. Richard Harrington z The Washington Post na její adresu poznamenal, že jde o nejhorší herečku v anglicky hovořícím světě. Ani to ji nicméně neodradilo od dalších hereckých pokusů. Here it is in the same place as však, right next to the verb. We could also have it right here at the beginning of the sentence. Nicméně ani to ji neodradilo. Now let's do a little exercise. I would like to have a look at these 3 sentences with ale, and I would like you to replace ale by však and nicméně. First, let's replace these 3 sentences with však. So remember, we cannot say comma and však, so it cannot be in the same place as ale. This one is a little tricky because we have auxiliary by, and then it's the main verb, vypadalo. So však would actually go right before the main verb, not the auxiliary. So it would be, v tuhle chvíli by to však vypadalo dost hloupě. And the second one, it would go here. Trvalo to dlouho, zadařilo se však. We only have one verb in here, so it has to go after the verb. What about here? Nedívám se zpět. Abych však slušně odpověděla. It would be better to put it before the verb, yes, because we are starting with the auxiliary. But also we have this adverb, which we should not separate from the verb. Because slušně odpověděla connects with the verb, so we don't want to break them. We would just put it here. Abych však slušně odpověděla. Now, how do you replace it with nicméně? It will be easy, because you can keep it exactly at the same place as ale. A nicméně v tuhle chvíli by to vypadalo dost hloupě. Or here, trvalo to dlouho, nicméně, koma, zadařilo se. Or you could say, trvalo to dlouho, nicméně se zadařilo. You would switch the order and there will be no comma after nicméně. Nedívám se zpět. You can start the sentence with nicméně as well. Nicméně, abych slušně odpověděla, you could have a comma there. Let me know if you have any questions regarding this topic or if you have any suggestions for other tricky conjunctions or words that are a little problematic for you. To je ode mě všechno. Mějte se krásně a uvidíme se za týden. Čau, čau.